Okay, next up is the dual rate expo menu. Now this is going to be, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because this will also relate later when I talk about pitch and throttle curves. There's some fundamental things here that you need to start picking up on when using this radio for pitch curves, throttle curves, mixes, all kinds of stuff, all right? And I'll get into that. I'm not going to spend any information here on what a dual rate is or what an expo is, as I have a video out there in my Heli Skills 101 that talks about what dual rate is and what expo is, all right? I'm simply going to show you how to set it. So right now we have aileron selected. So we're in a dual rate expo menu for aileron, all right? So here we have the rate. Right now by default that's 100%, which means, and I am going to digress, which means when I move the stick all the way over on aileron, I'm getting 100% of throw based on my EPAs. We'll get into that in a minute. All right, so that means 100% of whatever my EPAs are. Right now the EPAs are 100, so I'm getting 100% out of that. I can increase the percent or decrease. Now when I do this, you notice I don't have a switch set, which means basically it's going to be set for all the time. I can't turn it on or off. We'll talk about setting a switch to turn it on or off in a minute. All right, so I'm going to reset that back to 100. So aileron left, do I want 100%? Do I want less? A lot of guys, when they're setting up dual rate, they want less. Let's say I only want 80% when I'm flying and have that be controlled by a switch. So sometimes my stick doesn't throw the servo as far. It's only 80% of the EPA. And then I throw a switch and it can go back to 100. And I'll show that in a minute. All right, so left and right for dual rate. Expo, again, see my video on Expo. What Expo does, just in a nutshell, is you can make it slow down or speed up the stick around center. Adding Expo means the servo doesn't move as much in relation to throw around center as it does all the way over. Expo does not change your total throw. It changes how the servo moves around center. All right, so if I want to add some Expo, I can add some Expo. Now watch what happens on the graph. All right, notice the curve. What this means is the servo is going to move really fast around center and slow down around the ends. Let me reset and give negative Expo. It's important if you're going to use Expo to know what you're doing. All right, so I put in, what, 47 there. Pardon me, still getting over a cold. You'll see that now it's flattened out around center, which means if I move the stick a lot around center, the servo is going to move very little. As a matter of fact, I can exaggerate that to where it hardly moves at all around center. Now it's really flat. I move the stick around center, the servo hardly going to move. You can see when I move the stick, this line, now the servo is really going to take off. All right, that's what Expo is. That's how you adjust it. Again, we haven't tied this to a switch yet. Again, there's some fundamental things here you need to learn. All right, so that's your Expo. And so on and so forth. All right, you'll see this little C up here. What that means is combined. That means in my flight modes, normal, idle 1, idle 2, and hold, I will have those Expos. Notice when I haven't set up normal, idle 1, idle 2 yet, so it's not changing up here. I'll have to do that to continue this demonstration. But combined means that whatever I change in one of these, all right, will be the same setting I get in any of my flight modes. All right, so it's super important to understand that. All right, even though I haven't assigned it a switch. Now, here's the important part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for a minute and set up conditions so you can see how this combined and separate works. So I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about the pause. I had to set up conditions. So you'll see I've set my condition switch so I can get idle up 1, idle up 2, and hold. All right, so what's this all about? And this is why the combined thing, and this is why I want to get into it. Notice I have still set null here. I don't have a separate switch controlling when I have a dual rate or an Expo. And on a Heli radio where you set, Heli setup where you set condition, that's what this combined and separate is for. So let's take a look at that. Let's say I want to set a Expo of minus 62. All right, so there I have it. I'm in minus 62. Now notice when I switch conditions, idle 1, I still am at minus 62. Idle 2, I'm still at 62. Idle 3, I'm still at 62. So by having this set as C or combined mode, I will always have this Expo setting in all of my flight conditions. But let's say I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and hit reset and take that out. I'm going to go into normal, and I'm going to hit C, and I'm going to make it an S, which means normal mode is now separate from all the other conditions. Now, it's important you follow me on this. I'm going to set for 62, or some amount of expo. Now watch what happens, because I said normal has its own setting. When I flip into idle 1, notice it went back to 0. Idle 2 is 0, and hold is 0. Only when I go back into normal do I get that expo that I put in. So now, let's say you want 62 expo in normal, and when I go into idle up 1, notice it's back to a C. Let's say I want idle 1 to be different than idle 2. Or let's say I don't. If I want idle 1, idle 2, and hold to be the same, then I could just leave it combined and idle 2 combined. But let's say in normal, I want that expo, and in hold, I want that expo. I go into hold, I change hold to be separate. Now, I can go ahead and I can dial in some expo in there. So now, if you'll notice, normal has, what do I got, 57 in normal, 52 in normal. I got 57 in hold, but notice my idle ups are 0. All right, so that's what that C and the S does. By default, every mode on the radio is combined. Again, this will become important in pitch and throttle curves later, because this might mess some people up. And this is unique to this radio, as well as I remember having a Futaba 14MZ that had this combined as default. So understand, you don't have to set a switch if you're a heli flyer and have conditions. I'm not going to go into airplane to find out how it works, since this is heli focused. But there you go. You can have different expo, dual rates, etc. Based on the condition you're in without ever setting a switch. So I'm going to reset this. I'm going to change this back to combined. Okay, I'm going to reset, make sure everything's reset, go into hold, change that back to combined, reset that. All right, let's just make sure everything's 0 in my conditions. All right, so now you can actually get double control. So let's say I want to make switch B a dual rate toggle. All right, now this is interesting. So I'm going to go into null. I'm going to say I'm going to select a switch, and I'm going to select switch B. All right, and then once again, it's going to say, hey, switch B, which do you want here? Switch B. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I did that right. Okay, so now we back out. So now, if you'll notice, switch B